But I know you. We've known each other for years. We hung out, we golf, um, and different things of that nature. And I feel like now that you're an NBA champion, that you are going to big time me, and not. And I'm just listen, man. Like I know, and I could see certain things in people, and I know. I said when this guy makes it, man, it might be over for us, man. Like we're not gonna golf no more. Like you're gonna be the new Varnell Hill. Like
Oh my God.
it's gonna be Hollywood talk when you say we're gonna golf.
You gonna bring Varnell into this.
Hey, family. This is Che Willis coming back with another episode of the Wealth is a Journey podcast. Guys, this is episode 15. It's a big deal for your boy, man. I talk about it all the time. Consistency is huge. And I think it's fitting because a lot of the guests that I have on here, we talk about their journey, what they've gone through to make it to where they are in life and where they're going in life. And today I got a special guest, my guy. This is my man, Jarrett Stephens. Jarrett, thank you so much for being on the Wealth is a Journey podcast, man. But we're going to get into some things today.
Okay. Thanks for having me, man.
Yes, sir. So Jarrett, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I want you to kind of just introduce yourself to the people. Just tell us what you do for a living, and then we're going to get into it.
Okay, my name is Jarrett Stephens. I'm an East Region scout for the Denver Nuggets. It was a long time coming, but yeah, I mean, obviously, in the last week, if you've been watching TV, you've seen that we've kind of made our way through the playoffs, and now I can call myself an NBA champion.
Let's go. Hey, you a humble dude, man. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't really start watching the NBA until the playoff time. I'm keeping it real. And when I heard, I'm like, yo, the Denver Nuggets is good, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. I watched one of the game. I'm like, fam, y'all are good. Yeah, I didn't know. So first of all, I apologize, but I'm just keeping it real. You know what I'm saying? We just me and you talk.
No, it's cool. I've got that a lot in the last month, but it's cool,
But I know you. We've known each other for years. We hung out, we golf, and different things of that nature. And I feel like now that you're an NBA champion, that you are going to big time me, and not. And I'm just listen, man. Like I know, and I could see certain things in people, and I know. I said when this guy makes it, man, it might be over for us, man. Like we're not gonna golf no more. Like you're gonna be the new Varnell Hill. Like
oh my God,
it's gonna be Hollywood talk when you say we're gonna golf.
You're gonna bring Varnell into this. Oh my goodness! Wow.
Nah, man. But seriously, I'm super happy for you, bro. Because I remember when we used to golf pretty often, and I'd be like, "Yo, what you doing for the rest of the week?" And then you will be working one job, and then you would go to another job. So why don't you kind of go back and then kind of tell us about your journey as becoming an NBA scout?
So what it was I played professional basketball in Europe for like 10 years after I graduated from Penn State. And then after I retired from playing overseas, it was kind of crazy because I was trying to figure out what my next move was. And when I would, try to go through different things, it was like, okay, I can do this until I do what I really want to do. And I knew I wanted to stay in sports and everything, but it's hard getting into sports, period, especially professional sports. Now I could have probably gotten into college sports because I have family and stuff in college sports, but like professional sports was where I really was. I knew it was my thing. So what it was I started like working for this medical uniform company, and everything was it was great, but the crazy thing about it is I knew I wasn't supposed to be there
Mm-hmm.
like 3-4 days after I got there. You know how you do like onboarding?
Mm-hmm.
And in my onboarding, I had a guy, you do like those exercises where you introduce each other and you learn, like take 5 minutes to learn about them and then you talk about them.
Sure.
So I'm like telling this guy about myself and about my journey and everything that I've done up until that point. And so he was sitting right next to me. And when we had gone through the whole exercise, and he had never really said anything to me, like before the exercise or even after the exercise. So, but then after the exercise, like 15 minutes later, they were talking, and I figured we were just moving through, the rest of the day. Like he slides like a note over to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is this? So I opened up the note and I read it, and he was like, "You don't belong here." He's like, "You better than this place." That
Wow.
was all. That was all he wrote on it. And the thing about it is, he never said anything else to me afterward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm like, man, oh man, like this guy, like he's like he knows exactly like my same feeling. I was like, I felt like I didn't that wasn't my thing. I had to end up doing it because obviously like I was I just had my second child,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just kind of going in and out of different little things here and there.
Sure.
And so, I worked in this job, and I felt like this job was teaching me things because I had to go into a lot of like doctor's offices. And so I had to now, because all my whole conversation was about sport. It was about basketball, or, oh, yeah, tell me about your journey and, playing in Europe, and tell me how it was on a Wednesday in January. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the thing, like all of these doctors wanted to know exactly what I was like. They want to be sort of in my life. And I knew that I could command like a room because, I'm this big guy, and it's like the room kind of lit up when I was there, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm building something here, because instead of me having to talk about sport, I had to learn how to talk about selling,
Sure.
selling like product and upselling product and different things like that. So it helped me to be a more of a rounded person, a well-rounded person, because now my conversation had to change from being, it had to change from being like, oh, this super athlete, to now I need to figure out how I need to get this done. And the elevator conversation, like it has,
Sure.
these doctors and office managers, you may only have 30 seconds to get out what you need to get out, and I had to learn how to do that. And so, after, with this job, it was kind of crazy because they were kind of having like layoffs and different things. And like a year and a half into it, I got laid off. And then I was like, kind of scrambling. And so from there, but I'm like a people person or whatever. So after that, like I ended up starting to work for Comcast and Xfinity. And so I was like out in like I was like the entertainment, like for marketing. So I would be at like all the sporting events and different things like that. And I would go into like a Philadelphia 76ers game or Philadelphia Eagles game, and I would be like, looking at all of these people, and I'm like, okay, well, I know that I could be that person that's sitting down, down there, that's close to the court. And so I'm like, okay, well, one of my boys, he hooked me up with this scouting gig, and he's already in the NBA. And he said, listen, if you just continue to put yourself in these spaces and around these people,
Mhm.
then you'll take off. And so I was like, okay. And he hooked me up with this job. It was just a local job. I wasn't getting paid. I was doing it like, on my own. And I mean, they made up my schedule, but I was doing a lot of work, but obviously I wasn't getting paid. So it was like an internship. But at this point, I'm like 37, years old, and I'm I'm not getting paid like a regular person. It was just an internship for me, really.
Let me ask you this, Jarrett, because I know you're married. I know you got two kids. First of all, how did that conversation go with your wife? That you were going to do something, or possible, be working for the NBA at some point down the line, but you don't know when.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you're working for free because your boy recommended to you to do this, how did that conversation go?
It was fine. She was cool with it, but the thing is it was a cool conversation because she knew it was my dream, and she knew
Hmm.
I knew what I was doing.
Okay.
This as long as she knew like my drive and my direction. She was like, "Go ahead, do what you got to do." So I was doing it for like a couple of years, and I would like so my day would be like I would go and I would like work, and then I come home from work, and then there would be a college game, like in the evening that was
Hmm.
within driving distance. So I would end up like coming home. I might pick the kids up, drop them off, and then I would like hit the highway, and I would go and do like these scouting jobs where I would like go to this game. The game might end at like 10 o'clock, and then I probably got to drive a couple hours back. So I'm getting home at like midnight, and then I got to start everything over again, in the morning. So it was definitely it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. The fact that I was doing it, and then at when you're doing it for like something for a while and you don't see it like happening, you start to get a little, frustrated, and
Hmm.
all of you like, man, am I doing this for nothing? And but
Sure.
but the thing about it is I just kept like people would always tell me when I would go, because I would put myself in that space. So I would go to like Vegas Summer League, um, and on my own dime. And when I
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, so I would go
Wow.
to, and then when I was there on my own dime, I would just stay like with my boy, and I would only go for like 3 days, because it was like,
Hmm.
I didn't want to, impose on him, like, because it was just, this was his job too. But what it was like, okay, he said, yo, you can come, you can, stay in my room. I got a huge suite or whatever. You can just stay in my room. And like he would introduce me to all these people. And when he would introduce me, all of these people would kind of say, listen, you stay around him, you'll be fine. And so, I did this for a couple of years, and still I was like, okay, what's going on with this? And then all of a sudden I go back up to my school from Penn State. And when I go up there, for a camp, I was working camp in the summer, like around this time, like late June or whatever. And when I was working the camp, the head coach saw me, and they had like some trouble type players, or some players that I shouldn't say trouble, but just needed some guidance. So he was like,
Sure.
"You were here. Why don't you come back for like for a season?" And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "Man, this might be my
Hmm.
way in, because obviously, like, I'm going to be doing, I'm gonna be around basketball. It's only great. It's great for my resume."
Sure.
And so I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so for that season, it was crazy, because I go up there, and I have like no place to live. But he wanted me to be up there for the week. And so because I didn't burn any bridges when I was in state college. Somebody reached out to me and was like, "Listen, you can stay at my house." In the basement, they had just gutted it and made it into like a luxury apartment.
Wow.
And they were like, "Listen, if you help us to like bring people in to like live here, like, maybe 6 months at a time, you good." And I'm like, "Oh, wow." So I'm thinking, okay, this is perfect for me. This is one thing that leads to the next thing. And now I know, like, with people's journey, it's not necessarily going to go from from A to B to C, like, and like my journey was like A to J to
Hmm.
C, and just because I was kind of all over the place. So I did that for a season and we had a pretty successful season. And I'm thinking, like, okay, now I have that behind me.
Hmm.
And my resume was kind of building and everything because I was scouting. And now all of a sudden I had like this kind of this gig for a year, you know,
Okay.
being back up at my school. And then, but the thing about it is, like, after the season, nothing kind of came from it. Like, I came home, I was like discouraged because, like, I'm thinking like, oh, this is gonna be an easy transition from here to the next thing. But but it wasn't. So I end up, going back into, because what I was doing is I was like substitute teaching. So I
Hmm.
would just go back into the substitute teaching, and it was cool. That was like great because I loved being around like the kids because it was high school kids.
Sure.
So, and when I first, I didn't forgot to mention, like, when I first retired, this is what I was doing. I was teaching, but I was also coaching girls basketball.
Okay.
And with this, like, I kind of, I really enjoyed it because, being around like young people, and they always gonna keep you on your toes. So when I got after the Penn State thing, I'm like, what is this? What is this for? And I'm praying, I'm like, man, I don't know, what does all this mean? And the next thing I know is like, I'm thinking like, that helped me for every job that I have, whether it was, working in a medical place or Xfinity or being around the kids, it was teaching me something. It was teaching me like a different skill that I didn't have.
Hmm.
Because, as an athlete, what it was a lot of things are done for you. You know,
Sure.
when you go to college, your academic advisor tells you, okay, you got to be here to study at this particular time. Coaches are telling you, hey, you got to come to work out at this particular time. So everything was kind of done for me. Even when I was playing in Europe, they had people like, okay, be here at this time. I'm gonna take you to go get your apartment. I'm gonna take you to go get your car. I'm gonna take you to, the local place to set up your phone and all of this, stuff. So it was easy. It was
Hmm.
easier for me.
But
Now it's
what? But going back to what you had said a minute ago, you it sounded like you faced a lot of challenges. Like you took a couple steps forward and then nothing happened, and you take a couple steps backwards. And then I think a lot of times when that happens to people multiple times and over again, even a few times, they get discouraged and they quit, right?
Mhm.
But what gave you the drive going through that multiple times over and over and over again to stick with it and keep going? Because that's the hardest part, right?
Yeah. So it's funny you asked that. Like, so I was going into interviews. I was going to enter interviews where people knew who I was. Like, I would go in, it was really weird. I would go into these interviews with ex Penn State alum. So I'm like, oh man, I know I'm crushing this interview and I'm gonna get this job. And this is when I thought I was gonna start to get into like sales and pharma or medical device and different things like that. So I'm like, I'm great. Like, and I would go into these interviews, and you know how when you're looking at the description of the job, they're like, okay, you need this and this and this and this
Mm-hmm.
to qualify for this job. And I felt like I was reading myself in like these descriptions.
Yep.
I'm like, man, oh man, like, why is this not happening? And it was crazy. And I'm like, maybe this isn't for me, because I was like getting pretty far in these interviews. And I'm like, okay, I'm reading a description of myself. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm talking about like down to like where I live, and you know, ex-athlete that loves, has a passion for this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, this is perfect for me. And then you weren't like even getting like callbacks. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so that was like discouraging as well. But then what it was I was thinking, because that wasn't working, it was still like the God was pushing me in this direction. It's like, listen, just keep going. And then I would always hear what people were telling me when I was in Vegas. It's like, just stay around him. And what he would do, my friend, what he would do is he would call me like once a month. He would call me once a month, or maybe even like once every 6 weeks, and he would just ask me like a couple of questions. And I think he was always like quizzing me,
Mm-hmm.
like like a in his head he would be like asking me like little questions, like, okay, let me make sure he is on the right track. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I came back from Penn State, I went right back into the scouting thing, and doing it
And
for
this is
free.
what you were doing for free still.
Yeah, it was still, I
Wow.
was doing it for free and
Okay.
still. So I was like, okay, but I gotta continue to keep doing it and keep doing it, because I feel like I always felt like it's going to work out. And when he would call me, like I said, it would be two, maybe three questions that he would ask me, and he wouldn't tell me, "Oh, I'm quizzing you" or whatever. He would just
Yeah,
ask me,
but you
like,
knew.
yeah, yeah. He would ask like, what do you think about this? And whenever I would see his name and come up on my phone, I would immediately, in like the next 5 seconds, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I got to get my mind
Yep.
sharp. It didn't make a difference what it was. Like, I was gonna make sure that this next 10, 15 minutes, I was gonna be completely clear and let him know everything that I knew and what I
Sure.
was like learning and everything. And he had told me for like years, he's like, listen, I know you know what you're doing. He was like, but right now I don't have any juice. But he was moving up in the organization, but he was like, I have no power right now. But he said, the second that I get some power, you my first hire. And so I'm like, okay. But when he would take me around, like when I would go to Vegas, he would introduce me to like the team that he was on, and like the president, the owner, just a lot of people in the front office. So they already knew who I was. I just had to always, make a good impression from year to year to year. And one time he called me in one of these just random phone calls. He called and said, listen, your name came up in like a conversation for a job, on the East Coast. And I'm thinking like, man, oh man, like this would be incredible if it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that the numbers would, I mean, pretty much in a set, office, it's probably around the same amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, but the East Coast scout, I know who he is. He's a good guy. He's a really good scout. I'm like, man, like how am I gonna take over his job and everything? But obviously I'm a man of faith. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not supposed to happen that particular way. So
Mm-hmm.
with me and different testimonies that I was hearing in church, like I would always be like, man, like I want to do what they were doing and have that type of faith. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember in particular, and I know you remember it too, like the testimony about Elder Rick, where he didn't have a job, but what he
Yep.
would do is he would get dressed up early in the morning,
Yep.
and he would drive to the place that he wanted to work at, and just sit there and sit in the parking lot. He wouldn't go in, but it was like he was just getting himself prepared for
Yeah.
going to that job every day. And so what it was for me is, so for the last couple of years before I got hired, I would go to these games kind of early, and when I would get to the game, early, like the way that they, for your credential, they usually put all the scouts in one area, and and they would put like your name on this little seat card or whatever, to
Hmm.
to show where you're seating. Um, and what it was I would see, like, it would be my name, and then on my right side it would be like another guy's name, Brooklyn Nets, and then on the left it would be like another guy's name, Cleveland Cavaliers. And I would like be sitting down in between these, and then it would have my name in this small company that's not affiliated with any team. So
Mm.
what it was before they would get to the game, I would I'm like, listen, I'm a manifest this. I'm a just, and so I would start taking pictures of their names. I would, on my phone, I would start taking pictures, and I would, send them to my wife and be like, this is me soon. And so besides taking the pictures, I would I would sit, I would sit in the chair.
Hmm.
I would sit in that person's chair and kind of just, touch the name tag and just claim it, like, this is me soon. And I start doing it like every game, like taking the pictures and just touching their name tag and stuff like that, just because I was gonna make this thing happen. And so, after I'd been doing it for a year, or for a couple of years, doing it that way, um so the team that my friend was with, he was the assistant general manager. Still,
Okay.
like I said, didn't have any juice, but he was kind of high up. And I knew the general manager, the president. I knew him, and he was a really good guy. And then all of a sudden, like last like last April, at the end of the season, he got another job, like a better job, and my boy moved up. And I was always thinking, like, man, like, okay, he moved up. And I didn't want to be like super super thirsty, but
Oh yeah.
I wanted to let my boy know, and I let him settle in. And, like, he had gone through the season, he had gone through the draft and everything. And and then, like, he had called me, like, out of the blue one day. And I was like, okay, this is my opportunity to let him know, because I remember what he said, like, listen, you my first hire. So when he called me, and it was toward like the beginning of the new, like July 1st is the beginning of every NBA season. And it was like July, maybe like 12th, 15th, or around that area. And he called me, and when he called, I was like, listen, I'm ready. I've been doing this for years. I know this is it's in my wheelhouse. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And he was like, okay. He's like, I hear you. And I'm thinking, like, okay, well, maybe I'm gonna just give him some time or whatever. So we hang up, and then maybe like 3 days later, he calls me, and he's like, yeah, listen, so I put your name in. He was like, I'm allowed to make some hires. He was like, but I put your name in, in as one of the hires. And it was like he like hired like 5 people.
Hmm.
And but everybody, all those other 4 people had already had NBA experience. They were already like, a couple of them had already played in the NBA. one of them had already won a ring with the Lakers.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so all of these other guys and me with no NBA experience, but I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
So he tells me, and I'm like, how you try to play it off, you don't get like excited, but
Yeah.
I'm like jumping up and down inside. I'm like, all right, man, yeah, that would be great. That would be great. And so I was sitting, on the couch, next to my wife. She didn't even hear the conversation. I told her, and she would be like, "Oh yeah, that's great. You should, pray about it and whatever happens, happens. At least you told him, and now he came back to you and told you that what he was going to do." So it was crazy. I can still remember it like it was yesterday. So I was driving home because like the Xfinity thing's a part-time thing.
Mhm.
So I was driving home from an event or whatever, and I saw, and this was like, again, it was like 3 days after that, after
Mhm.
he said he had turned the names into the owner. Because he said that he was like, I turned him in. He was like, but I don't know if the owner is going to approve it. So yeah, so like 3 days later, I'm driving home and his number pops up on my phone.
Mhm.
I'm like, this could be one or two things. Either he gonna shut me down,
Yeah.
or he gonna tell me, listen, it went through. So I pick up the phone. I pick up the phone. It was crazy because, like, I mean, how you kind of waiting for the person's voice, and so it was like a little pause. I don't know if it was like the signal or something. It was like a little bit of a pause, and he was like, "Hey man, what's up?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm just riding home from work or whatever." He was like, "Well, I just want to call and tell you." He was like, "You in?" And I
Let's
was
go.
I was like, "What?" I was like, "You have got to be kidding me."
Yeah.
And so like I'm like really excited, in the car or whatever, and I'm almost home, and I end up getting off the phone. And the crazy thing is I knew it was God working, obviously, through him and everything like that. But I knew it was because he's the one that supposedly put my name in
Mhm.
and the hire. But when he was talking to me, he was like, "I'm so happy for you." Like he had never heard it before. He was like, "I'm so happy for you that you getting this opportunity." It's like, man, you just had a hand in getting me this opportunity. But it
Yeah.
was like he had never heard it, or this was the first time he was hearing it.
Yeah.
But he was telling me that. So yeah, it
But
was
think about how and I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, 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 go ahead.
But think about, you ever mentored a kid and you talk to the kid and something clicks and you know that he gets it or she gets it.
Hmm.
And then they just take off with the information that you have or that you
Yeah,
gave them.
yeah, yeah.
And to see that happen is huge because first of all, it's rare for you to give people information and they actually take heed to what you say to them. And then
Yeah.
for you to do what he said for years,
Hmm.
sowing seeds of free time that you were doing, and then
Hmm.
now to get this job which he has a hand in because you listened to what he said.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's that, I mean, I don't want people to miss that because that's a big deal because um I think people want to do what you do or be where you are, but when you give them the information that you have to get to where you are, then they still want to do their own thing. Like, oh, I'll figure it out on my own. But if you just listen to the guy, what you did,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
took your time and you did the thing, and now you're first of all, you're an NBA scout, and then you end up winning the championship, which is crazy. The
Hmm.
first year.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah,
That yeah.
it's so I mean I'll go back a little bit. And so even when I first got hired, um So I know the steps and what happens, but I had
Hmm.
never been in those steps. So the first thing that I was thinking of was, they brought me in to Denver. When they brought me into Denver, like, so I'm like touring all of this, like the locker room, and there's some players there, and you try not to get kind of starstruck, because
Sure.
but at the same time it's like, okay, these are, $40 million players, a year
Yeah.
player. And so you're like in the facility, and then all of a sudden you're in HR, and then like they're trying to get your credit card together, and all of these different things that it's like, okay, I don't know what this is about. I've been using my own money and my own credit card, for all of these years. And now all of a sudden I had a company card with like a crazy limit on it that
Yeah.
gets upped every month. So I'm like,
Wow.
man, oh man. So the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, I'm just I'm just excited to get to training camp. All of a sudden you get to training camp, and I'm at training camp for about 3, 4 days. And like, so when we have the first meeting as a front office, of the season, I'm thinking that they're gonna put me into it like slowly. They're like, we're just gonna gradually give him more and more and more.
Hmm.
So I've opened up the booklet of, you know, everybody's assignments and all of this stuff and everybody's role in the organization. And I look at my name, and I'm like, okay. And again, I start taking pictures because my name now is in there. So I'm
Hmm.
taking pictures, and I'm sending them to my wife and everything. And when so I look at my assignment, and my assignment, they gave me like 6 conferences. And I'm like, 6 conferences, like in these college conferences on the East Coast. And I'm
Hmm.
like, man, they just throw, and then but every other college scout, they got 6 conferences. So I'm like, oh, they giving me the same thing they gave them. But the thing about it is I knew that I can handle it because of what I was doing before. When I
For
was
free.
for free, when I was doing it before for free, I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I know I can handle this. And for that smaller company, your reports had to be really, really extensive, because what it was um NBA teams would subscribe to yours. So they had their own scouts, but they will also lean on these small companies that do like these crazy like books on these players. So,
Hmm.
and I've been doing for years. I've been doing these books, for all these players. And then I get into this position, and they like, listen, I don't want to read all that. You can get all you need to get done in a 10-minute report. And I'm like, a 10-minute report? I've been spending hours on these things for the last few years. So
Yeah.
now it was easy. So I went from training camp, and then I was like, okay, I just can't wait until the season starts. And then, like the season starts to go along. And now all of a sudden I'm doing like the college games, and I'm like, okay, I can't wait to my first tournament. And then, where it was that little bit of a grind where, you got to fly here, you got to fly here. Cause I had never flown, you know, as a scout before. I had
Sure.
all it had always been like, just a drive here and then come right back home.
Yeah.
And then it was that first um flight where I had to go from like Orlando, and then the next day I had to go to another place in Florida, and then I had to fly back to Orlando. And now the grind was starting to work, and I'm like, okay, like I'm getting into the groove of this.
Yeah.
And um all the while, like, my wife, she like holding everything down, that then being so super supportive, her and my children. And I'm like, okay, well, just as long as they good, you know,
Yeah.
I'm good. And so you go through the season, and then halfway through the season, we're like, okay, we look like a pretty decent team. And I still remember it to this day. We played here at Philadelphia this past season. And when we played here at Philadelphia, at halftime, I because we were having mid-season meetings in
Okay.
Denver. In Denver, this was a Saturday night. The mid-season meeting started on Monday. So I was scheduled to fly back with the team. And all of a sudden, I'm like, man, I'm about to be like flying on a plane with like the NBA team. It was blowing my
Yeah.
mind. But like at halftime, I had to go get my bag to put it onto the bus because they wouldn't let me bring it into the arena.
Okay.
So I'm walking out with my boy, the GM now. I'm walking out, to get my bag to put it onto the bus. And he was like, man, we look pretty good, don't we? He was like, man, I think that we one of the better teams in the league. And that's when I first started thinking like, okay, we are in first place. There's some other teams that are kind of close. But, you know, I mean, it's the regular season.
Yeah.
So we just kind of talking about it like in a short, like 15-minute halftime. We end up going out and we lose the game after
Mhm.
we had been up by 15 twice in the game. We go out and we lose the game, and it was like, okay, I live in the Philly area. I work for Denver, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably gonna hear this, a lot or whatever.
What's
But
good, family? This is Che Wills from the Wealth is a Journey podcast. Have you guys checked out the website yet? Why not? If you haven't, come on, man. So we have a website, wealthisajourney.com. You can book a free discovery call. You can book a call for budgeting 101, investing 101. If you want to buy any merch, any of the t-shirts that you saw me wearing in previous episodes, you can buy those there. Any previous episodes that you saw or that you would like to see, they are all there on the website, wealthisajourney.com. So we got budgeting 101, we got investing 101, we got free discovery calls, see if we're a good fit to work with each other. We got merch, and we have previous episodes from the podcast. So go to wealthisajourney.com. Again, wealthisajourney.com. Let's get back to the episode.
kind of fast forward throughout the course of the season, like we still like stand at the top, but that at the top of the West.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking like, okay, just as long as we can get to the playoffs in the number one seed, it's great. And me, I was just thinking, listen, I just want to go to the playoffs. I just want to experience to see what the playoffs was like.
Yeah.
And everything was, it was kind of working that, okay, we're gonna make it to the playoffs. All of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden, we got the number one seed in the playoffs. And I'm like, okay, well, there's plenty of people who had the number one seed. And I look at how everybody else is. It's like, okay, we don't have to go through Minnesota. I'm thinking we could possibly get through Minnesota.
Yeah.
They were like the 7th seed or 8th seed. And I was like, okay, but then in that second round, we're gonna have to play Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Chris Paul. So now all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're gonna have to play Phoenix in the second round. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, maybe it was at least I made it to the playoffs and I made it to the second round. And then we go up 2-0.
Not just
And
2-0. Then y'all was blowing them out. When you
well, yeah, we went up 2-0, and then we went to Phoenix, and then they won 2 straight. They
okay.
won 2 straight, so it was 2-2. And then we come back home and then we win game 3. So we're up 3-2. And then game 4, I'm taking a flight somewhere. So
Oh
I'm
man.
I'm missing the game. Like, and
Wow.
what it was the flight got delayed, and it like by the time I landed, it would have been like halftime. So I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is a deciding game. I turned my phone on and we're up by 30 at halftime. And I'm like, okay, this is the deciding game. We go ahead and we win the game. now it's like, okay, this team hasn't been in the Western Conference Finals in I don't know how many years since Mutombo was holding the ball on the ground like that. And I'm like, okay, well, we can like hopefully we'll be fine.
Mhm.
And but again, it's against LeBron, it's against AD. And you're like, okay, well, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna have to do it and go through these monsters, Hall of Famers, arguably the best player ever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, who knows what can happen? But I knew that we were a good team. We
Yeah.
were a good team, and and then it happens that we ended up sweeping them. And I'm like, okay, well, now this is the finals. And obviously we were watching this game between this series between Miami and Boston, and Miami goes up 3-0, and we're like, okay, we're gonna play Miami. Then Boston wins 3 games in a row. It goes to game 7 in Boston. So we start making plans to go to Boston
Mhm.
because you playing game 7 at home. It's a pretty good chance that you probably gonna win that game.
Sure.
Miami wins, and we're like, and we wanted Miami to win because we knew that we were better than both teams, but we
Sure.
knew it might be an easier road to go through Miami.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, Miami wins, and we win game 1, we lose game 2, so it's tied 1-1. We go to Miami, and I'm thinking like, okay, all we have to do is win 1 here, and then we get the home court advantage back. We go to Miami and win 2, so now it's like we're up 3 games to 1.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, my family and I, we like I know I was going to be at the game, and my kids had been to games on the road that was close to here, but they had
Mhm.
never been to Denver. And so I'm like, I'm gonna take them. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be in like a deciding game, and but I'm we all flying out. So we go out. It was a very very ugly game, but yeah, it's just like we ended up pulling it off in the end. And yeah, so and the thing about it is I still like trying to think back to the night and all of the everything that,
Mhm.
that kind of happened like over the course of the last year, but throughout the season and then throughout the series. And I saw myself like this, like ever since that conversation. Not only did I see myself in the position, but when at halftime of that Philly game, I saw myself like, right, we have a really good shot of going to the finals.
Yeah.
Um, Winning it, maybe, but we have a shot of going to the finals. And then like seeing myself like in the finals and having like a finals credential and having like or just being in Miami, like on the court before the game and seeing all these people. And
Yeah.
now, because before I would always be thinking like, oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. I don't know if, I don't know if I got G14 classification to be standing
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
here. But then like, they like scanning my thing like, go ahead. And then, so
Yeah.
I'm like, I knew I belonged there. And yeah, so it happened, and now like just going through like the champagne celebration afterward,
Mhm.
and
Hey,
and
Pastor Jerome might be watching, so I know you had like sparkling cider, right? You, my
sparkling
man. I
cider.
knew it. I knew it, but I just want to
Yeah,
make sure everybody else knew. You
yeah. So like
know?
and everything. So like just going through all that stuff, and then with the same time, like my family being able to be there and experience it all
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
um, was incredible. And then like the parade, and then shortly after that, like this past week, we just finished the draft. So that was one thing like last year when I first got the job. that I wanted to I was excited about the draft because I had been doing it for so many years. And I was like, man, like the war room, just to be in the war room and like everything happening and you making a decision to hopefully make the right decision that the team gets better so you can do it again. And
Yeah.
so that was the whole thing. And then so I experienced my first draft on Thursday, which was incredible. Like the way that everything happens and in real time and the phone calls, like everything you see in like a movie, like
Yeah.
I saw it like I'm there. So I'm like, it's happening like right in front of me. And
Wow.
to a point where sometimes I was like getting a little like I wasn't concentrating, like and like man, okay, you gotta stop, like you
Yeah.
here, so be here, do what you're supposed to do, and so and it was a great draft for us. We got everybody that we targeted. We had three picks, and we got everybody, all three picks that we targeted. So it was a great draft, man.
Bro, I think that one of the bigger things or bigger points is that I'm assuming when you were playing basketball overseas, your dream was to make it to the NBA at some point. I would
Mhm.
assume, right?
Yeah,
And the fact that you went through everything that you went through, the ups and the downs, the okay, I think I'm gonna get this job, and then I don't get it, and you actually win a ring without even having to play. That's the crazier part to me. Like you always wanted to win a ring, an NBA ring. That's every basketball player's dream. I
mhm.
would assume. But the fact that you won a ring without even having to play, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It is, um and it is. I definitely don't take it for granted because there's people in our organization, like the equipment manager and the secretary have been in the Nuggets organization for 40 years and have
Wow.
never like you know had an opportunity to go to. They've never gone to the finals. They've gone to the Western Conference Finals, but never gone to the finals. And then you go to the finals and then you win it. So, I'm like thinking like, okay, this is my first year, but this is things that I saw.
Yeah.
I saw myself, I saw myself in that situation, especially after talking about it. But
Hmm.
I saw myself in that situation. I saw myself testifying to my experience. I saw that years ago. Years
Bro,
ago.
that's big.
I've never told like
Yeah.
anybody that, but like I saw myself testifying in front of the church years ago. And when I first got the job, I remember, Pastor Jerome saying, okay, well, because we were on the phone, it was like, now you got to testify. So I was waiting to hear that,
Hmm.
and then it happened, and then I'm like, okay, but there's little tidbits of things that I'm, how afterward you're like, man, maybe I should have said that,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it comes up to where I win a championship again. I saw myself testifying about my experience and winning the championship, and it happened the Sunday, like this past, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before. And yeah, so like I'm like seeing these things, and yeah, I just feel extremely blessed, and just so grateful just to be in the position.
Yeah, man. And I want to I know you gave your wife a shout out before, but I know my wife.
Hmm.
Um and I know it takes a special individual to be able to hold a household down while you're out living your dream.
Hmm.
And I don't know how that would have worked in my house. So I want to give your wife a shout out, man. Because that's a big deal for her to kind of like I said, hold the house down, do all the day-to-day stuff, cook and clean, and check on the girls and making sure the homework's done and all those different things that she did. And because she did that, you were comfortable enough to do your job because
Yeah,
you knew
yeah,
that everything back home was good.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? And that's huge.
And she and I knew that she was all in, kind of from the beginning of the season, um, just because what I had done. Remember when I was at Penn State? So when I was
Mm-hmm.
at Penn State and I had the apartment, she was still back here at home.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would do is I would be up there for like the week, like the hard work week. During the weekends it's a little bit easier, but
Yeah,
during the hard work week, I would be there, and so she had to take the girls, take them to school, pick them up, get them to all of their extracurricular activities, um, plus feed them and make sure homework is done and all of that stuff. And me, like a little bit I would like be on the phone, you know but then I would like be at practice, or I would or I would be on the road someplace, so it wasn't as easy for me to um to just pick up the phone and do homework with them or something like that.
sure,
It
sure,
wasn't as easy. But she knew it was like there was something there, and I gotta let him do this, and in order for us to get to where we want to go. And
sure.
it was still like not easy, because remember, after that season, nothing had really come from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I end up leaving Penn State, and then and so I came back home, and we kind of went right back into the same pattern, like of me like being at the school, and I was thinking like, man, nothing really came of this. But
Mm-hmm.
then I can still remember her asking me, like in the middle of the season, there was a little bit of a break, and then like at the beginning of the season, um, I can remember her asking, like, isn't this the time that you're supposed to start like scouting with the small company? And I was like, yeah, it is the time. And I felt myself kind of like slipping into like that like depression over it, and like
Mm-hmm.
thinking, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
Uh, but all the while that I'm like, but I know I'm supposed to be doing it. So
yeah,
so I just kept plugging at it. And I remember, like I said, I remember her asking me, and me just being like, yeah, I'm supposed to be doing it. And the next day, like calling to get like my schedule,
mm-hmm.
and I'm like, okay, well, I just got to kind of keep pushing through it, keep pushing through it. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's just, it took time. And I mean, and I would never say it was an easy journey. I would
mm-hmm.
never say it was an easy journey. I would never take the even the journey part, not only this job, but the journey part of it, because like I felt like um I did it like kind of on my own. Like I have like family and stuff and people that probably could have helped me like
Yeah,
another way,
yeah,
but I like did it on my own. It was like a grind for me. And
sure.
I could always remember like those late night drives, I can remember, coming home from Penn State, because what I would do is on the weekend, whether we played at home or whether we played away, whatever time, whatever time I got back to State College, which is 3.5 hours from here, I would
Mm-hmm.
drive home no matter what. So if the plane landed at 1 in the morning, I was driving to 4:30, so I can make sure I could be home for 2 days, because I would have to stay home. I would be home Sunday, I would be home Monday, but then I had to be in the office like Tuesday morning
Yeah,
at like 8 o'clock. So I would be getting up at like 4. so I can get there at 7:30 so I could be, to work on time. So
Yeah.
I appreciate, and I know it was a grind, and but it's just a part of, little part of the story, or little chapter, a little nugget that's kind of thrown in there. And I just, it just makes me who I am today, and makes I don't want to say makes for a good story or narrative, but it's it's my journey. And
Yeah.
like you got on the shirt that says persevere. I mean, that's kind of just what I did. Every time something kept like knocking me down, I was like, man, well, I just gotta kind of keep moving. And it's gonna happen.
Yeah. And I think uh the reason, one of the reasons why I have this podcast is because um everybody has reached some type of level of success in their life, small or large, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's important to show people that you didn't just arrive here. Like, there was a journey that you had to go through to get to where
Mhm.
you are today.
Yeah.
And with social media and different things of that nature, you'll see people's final destination. That you see this nice package here, pause.
Mhm.
um but it's like you see it, but you don't know what happened as far as the journey went behind getting to this
Mm.
place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's important for people like you to show that you did this for years for
Mhm.
free,
Yeah. Yeah.
leaving your family
Yeah.
and sowing, like I've said before, sowing seeds, because that's what you were doing. You were sowing seeds, and now you're an NBA champ, from doing years and years and years of work, and then working for free and leaving your family, substitute teaching, and doing these the side scouting jobs. And then it's a huge testament, man. And it's a big deal, and I think it needs to be applauded, because it's showing people that in order to get to a place that you want to be, which you
Mhm.
always said that you wanted to be at this place, you saw yourself doing it, that it's going to take hard work, it's going to take perseverance, it's going to take you going beyond yourself and what you think you can do to get where you want to go. I think it's a big deal, man. I think a lot of people need to hear this story, and then other stories of people I have on here, because people need to be encouraged at the end of the
Mhm.
day. You know
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
I think it all starts from like we all hear like these stories, and we all hear these testimonies and everything. And I just, with what I've gone through, and like you said, it was the hard work. And you hear a lot of athletes talk about, well, behind closed doors, like the hours and hours and hours that they put in to
Yeah.
to get where they want to go. That was the thing, like with me, like I had to do that just when I was coming up to and playing basketball. I had to work and work and work. I earned a scholarship to school. But then it didn't stop there. And then it was like, yeah, now I'm in school at a Power 5 school, but I'm trying to get to the NBA.
Hmm.
It didn't happen that way, but I know the work that I put in. And another thing I always say, and I think I mentioned it earlier before, is the relationships that you build along the way. Like,
Hmm.
I would always tell people, like don't, like, and even being in the school, I'm always telling like kids, like, don't burn any bridges. You never know when you're gonna need that person to, for a reference, or
Correct.
uh, like, I understand that you might not have had a good day with that person.
Hmm.
Believe me, with high school kids, it's a whole lot of those days.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, don't burn that bridge. And that was one of those things, because I can still go back to State College, and there's a number of people that still like love me just because of what I did when I was in school. I don't know how many years ago, but
Yeah.
they still remember me being this genuine guy that was just a good person. And so yeah, I always tell people like, with the journey that you have, it's gonna be some bumps, but in those bumps, you can't necessarily like, let those bumps turn into like bruises in between,
Yeah.
the people that you meet. And so yeah, yeah. I mean, and like I said, like this, the the whole journey it's been incredible, but it comes from like, I mean, you just have to kind of grind it out, and I would, and to this day, like, I have some friends that I'm always like texting and stuff like that. And we always talking about just grind it out, even if it's just the simplest thing, like going in the backyard and cutting the grass, hey, go ahead, grind it out, and that's just the, kind of thing that I've taken. It's like whatever comes up, just grind it out and go through it, and you'll be cool on the other side.
Absolutely, man. So okay, so you're a scout, East Coast scout. Um, what's the aspirations now? Does it become scout, and then is it the next progression, assistant GM, then GM, or how does that work?
So it's kind of like that. You can go from a scout to like a director of scouting, whether it's college scouting or pro scouting, or
Mhm.
just the director of scouting, period, on both
Okay.
sides. And then from there, it's like an assistant GM, and then it's like a GM. But it's a lot that goes. It's a lot of learning that goes along with that. Like in this first year, there was a
Mhm.
lot of times where I would just kind of sit in these meetings and kind of just take it in and try
Mhm.
to learn as much as possible. Like, because it's a little bit different when you going from writing on a blackboard to now all of a sudden you having conversations about balancing $125 million salary cap. And so a lot of numbers get thrown out. And it's like, okay, you have to, and then there's so many different rules and different things like that. And so throughout the course of the season, I'm just trying to learn like the verbiage. I'm
Sure.
trying to learn like the rules of how everything goes. Because sometimes people try to get into these things, and now all of a sudden they want to jump into a conversation and they don't necessarily know like what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's not gonna be me.
Yeah.
So I would just go in, and sometimes it's to a point where toward the beginning. Now I'm kind of, I'm into it, and other members of the front office, they invite me into the conversations and stuff like that, and it's easy now. But at the beginning, I would just kind of sit there and just kind of listen from all different directions, just listen and try to learn it. And then they would, at times they would ask like, what do you think? And I had to process it real quick, just like those quick phone calls that my boy had to process it real quick, because I
Mhm.
know they're gonna end up asking me like what I think. And you also don't want, because everybody knew that me and my boy, we went to school together. So it's kind of a tricky relationship now, because we have a very professional relationship. Like,
Mhm.
when we're around everybody else, we rarely talk. Like,
Sure.
he doesn't really, he kind of keeps his distance from me.
Sure.
It was more so toward the beginning. Now it might be a little bit different, toward the middle to the end of the season.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of the season, I remember I was telling you about training camp. When I got to training camp, we got to we got to like our first meeting, and I hadn't even talked to him before the meeting started. And then
Mm,
he left the meeting early. So I didn't really get to talk to him like after the meeting. Then we
yeah,
get into the gym, and as a GM, he's moving everywhere throughout the course of the gym. So he don't have time to talk and reminisce about us being in college or
yeah,
stuff like that. He has to do his job now. So it was very weird. I would tell people all the time, like, because people would ask, like, oh, so how is it, working with him? I'm like, first of all, he's not one of my directors, because it's people under him that
sure.
that I answer to. So he's not one of my directors. So I would be like, we don't really talk, but it would be very, very weird. We wouldn't talk like that pretty much that whole week at training camp, maybe a few words here and there. But I get home, and the second I get home, he'll call and we'll talk for an hour.
Yeah. It's more,
So
it was more, it sounds like it was more training
yeah,
for you
yeah,
to kind of figure it out.
it's to figure it out. That's
Yeah.
the same thing as me opening that booklet, and now I got 6 conferences. When I'm thinking in my head, I'm about to go in this thing, they're gonna give me a game here or a game here. But it was one of those things where they just kind of threw me to the wolves, and it's like, listen, he gonna figure it out. And
Yeah.
then still, like, throughout the course of the season, he never like treated me like I was somebody special or that I was one of his friends.
Hmm.
He treated me like it was one, like, okay, you the low on the totem pole. So it was times where we would go, like, the whole front office may go out to dinner, but then there had to be a couple of people that stayed back for something
Hmm.
and that couldn't go out to dinner. And it was like I was that was that person. I was like,
Yep.
okay, and I appreciated it. But then, after a while, he had come back, and like, it was like weeks later, and I think that he kind of felt a certain way about it, but he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And he even came back to me and was like, listen, the reason that I did that, I was like, you don't have to explain nothing to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm this is my first year. I know what it's about. I know that, I have to take my lumps and my bruises. I have to do that.
Sure.
And so that was, and it was just all a part of, like, the journey. And it was, and I actually just got a text, because I've been moving for like the last, like, 2 months, where I haven't been home for like a week span in, at least a month and a half, 2 months, since the playoffs started. So
Yeah.
because it's been like, come home for a day or two and then right back on the road. And I thought I was gonna have to go back out of town this week. I think I texted you earlier, and
Hmm.
he wrote me a text this morning and was like, you had a great first year. He was like, you fine. And, for like the next 10 days, because I was gonna have to go do 2 trips in those 10 days before summer league. And he
Okay.
was like, you fine, take some time, relax with the family. So I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Especially when, obviously, everybody loves to hear, like, praise from their boss, and, you know you're doing what you're supposed to do, and great job and stuff like that. And so I'm getting that, and that's just, like, part of it. And it's like, it feels good.
Yeah. And I think also too is important to note what you're saying is you basically earn the right to be able to do that. It's not just given to you because again, that's your boy.
Right.
You did what you were supposed to do a long time ago during your training period,
Hmm.
before you got the job.
Yeah.
And he knew that you could handle what you needed to handle. And he also knew that you were going to do what you were supposed to be doing once the time came.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you did what you were supposed to do. Go ahead and enjoy your 10-day break because you deserve it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I think this was a really good interview because you talked about a lot of, and I just asked the question, I got out the way.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think it's important for you to tell your journey, your story. And I think a lot of people are going to be able to, resonate with what your story is. And it might not be the NBA, but it may be trying to make their college basketball team or their high school basketball team, or trying to get a job, or trying to make more money, or try to do something that they see. But because of the bumps and the bruises that they're taking along the way, it may seem like they're further away than they really are.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times the enemy tries to get us in that mindset. Like, we see where we're supposed to be. We see the prize right here, but then you go through a couple trials and tribulations, and then you're like, well, maybe it's not for me. But that's the thinking that he wants to get in your head, and for you to push through and persevere and fight through, and then get your wife on board and do the things for free. I think it's a huge deal, man. And I think you deserve to be applauded for that.
Oh, I really appreciate it, man. I appreciate you and your friendship and what we, and the friendship that we've built over the last few years, even if, going from playing golf or going to a basketball game, or, and I still remember the conversation when we rode up to the men's conference, and we had talked about this. And I mean, just and like me saying, and I remember you saying, like, it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And at this point, this was some years ago.
That was a long time ago, fam.
Yeah, it was some years ago. So I remember, like, us talking about this. I was like, man, well, he told me it was gonna happen, but it still ain't happening yet. But yeah, but it's just, yeah. And I just like to feel like, and sowing good seed and different things like that, because and Pastor always tells us, if you're looking for a job, try to help somebody else get a job. And that's what I was always thinking for the last few years. I'm like, man, how can I help somebody else get a job, or get into school, or help them, even if it's in a conversation. Like, I'm being around like all of these students and stuff like that, because like sometimes that's all it takes is like for one conversation, for something to like grab onto somebody and know their worth, i.e. me getting slid a piece of paper and being told you don't belong here, you're better than this. It's the same thing as me telling, a kid, like, listen, like, just because you might have got a bad grade, or or you having like this rift between this teacher, that don't mean you're a bad kid. It's just about your approach and where you go from here, and making sure you don't go left. So yeah, so it's been like I said, a great journey, and like I said, with people like you and stuff like that, and just encouraging, and it's been awesome.
I appreciate it, man. And I know, and we're going to wrap this thing up, but I know it could be, like, you get the encouragement, but then when you get on the basketball court with me, you get on the golf course with me, we're not going to talk about what, we not going, because you in the NBA now, and I want people to think different of you. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to talk about that. But the people in the gym know what happened. Lil Rome know, Eddie knows, Brian was there. We're not going to talk about it, but
oh gosh, oh goodness,
for the three, and then
that's not even.
I put the pump fake, and then you was.
Oh my!
You was in. I just saw you floating in the air. It's listen, man. It's cool. You still my man.
Yeah, listen. This your podcast. I don't want to, I don't want to, embarrass you on your own podcast, but we're gonna let that one slide then.
Nah, you my man, Jarrett. But what I always ask my guests on here is that where do you see yourself in the next few years? I know you saw yourself working for an NBA team, being a scout. Where do you see yourself in the next few years? So that we can run this thing back and be like, okay, he definitely said he was going to do that.
Well, I mean, I feel like we still got the pieces in play to kind of do it again. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
with the draft that we had, like I can see us doing it again. As far as my career goes, um, like I had some people tell me that because when you're a director, you might have to move out to to whatever team you're with in
Mm-hmm.
that city, and people say, "Listen, you're gonna be the next. You're gonna be the next to move or whatever." And like I feel like I have a lot of respect in the front office,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of respect in the front office, and I think it's genuine respect, not just oh this is his friend, let me be cool with him. I think that they value my opinion, they
Sure.
value everything that I bring to the table. And the crazy thing about it is when we were just out in Denver, people would come up to my wife and say like, listen, like we love the fact that he's here, and like this guy's awesome and stuff like that, which makes me feel pretty good. um but I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I just have to kind of continue it, and in the next few years I could be a director. Who knows? In you know 8-10 years I could be an assistant GM and a GM. So
Yeah.
I'm just it's a journey, and
Yeah.
it's a grind. I just gotta kind of keep grinding it out.
Yeah. No doubt, man. And yeah, man. I think this was good, man. Like I said, on a lot of different levels. From your journey, seeing where you were, seeing that you had multiple opportunities to give up, and you didn't. You
Yeah,
fought
yeah.
through. You kept your eye on the prize, and you kept going. And definitely appreciate people like you to even like. I'm not where I want to be in life at all. Like I'm in a good spot. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but
Mhm.
seeing people like you being able to make it to where you are now is inspiring to me, and
Mhm.
hopefully other people are inspired hearing your story. And I felt like I was in church last week whenever I text you, and I'm like my process of doing podcasts is a little bit different, but I heard to have you on and I texted you immediately.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
on the inside. Like, so I'm like, let me reach out to my man. We was just texting the other day anyway, and let me reach out to him and see if you do it. I know you busy. I mean, I know if you was going big time me. I didn't know.
Uh, oh, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do
Nah,
that.
but I appreciate you, bro, and keep doing your thing, and I'll be cheering you on. And whenever you do figure out whatever your next thing is, let me know so I can believe with you for whatever that move is,
Oh
bro.
yeah, no doubt. You'll always hear it. You'll always hear it. I mean,
Yeah,
because now it's like I know the recipe.
yeah,
So yeah, once you know the recipe, it's a lot easier to cook.
that's a fact. That's a fact. Yeah, I know. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
gosh.
No, we
Oh
not.
goodness.
Don't forget it, man. Forget it. Forget it. But listen, man. Whenever you get a free minute, man, let me know so that we can get out on the links, man.
Listen, I just told you that I'm free for the next 10 days. Whenever
Okay.
you're trying to get out, let me know.
Okay. 10 days, B. 10 days.
Okay. Okay. All right, Simon.
I got you, man. But thanks again for being a guest on the Wealth is a Journey podcast, Jarrett. Appreciate you, man, and keep cooking out there, bro.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
No doubt. What's good, family? So hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode today. Today, I'm excited because I am highlighting our entrepreneur highlight for today is going to be one of my MMU, the Morning Meetup family, Rhea Nicole. She has a super dope clothing brand. If not you, then who? Rhea, take it away.
To maintain motivation on my wealth journey, I require constant reminders and motivational cues. One of my favorite morning mantras is, if not you, then who? It serves as a reminder that the responsibility for achieving my dream life and wealth solely lies with me. Inspired by this mantra, I created the Then Who brand, a line of motivational apparel and accessories. The brand aims to inspire individuals to break generational cycles, build generational wealth, and leave a lasting legacy. If not you, then who? If this message resonates with you, then visit shopthenwho.com, explore our collections, and find what speaks to you.
Make sure before you go, you like and subscribe to the podcast. If you feel like it has added value to your life, make sure that you share it. Who knows who it may help? Sure, you know people that this could help. So make sure you share it, like, and subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.